You are so close now.
Hold on for me. I will find you.
Housemarque have been a staple in gaming for many a decade, starting life back on the amazing Commodore Amiga and Stardust, a game I still own today. They've always made arcade-focused gameplay-first titles with a flair for awesome visuals, challenging but skill-based action, and a penchant for technical achievement. Oh, and particles. At the PS5's launch, they delivered an early standout title in Returnal. Ripley meets roguelike third-person shooter with a haunting and intriguing story blended with particle-fueled pyrotechnic action with aliens, guns and ancient relics. Saros is the unofficial sequel to that impressive game, again built with Unreal Engine, this time with their 5th iteration, and continues to push on particles, bullet, ballet, hell swarms, tentacle tech and a slightly easier difficulty curve. Well, slightly more pliable, shall we say. But the game also has a PS5 Pro version which offers an even bigger push up the power stack with image quality, but not frame rate.
Jerome, eyes up, we've got trouble.
In a refreshing change, the game only has a single mode on each, old school in gameplay design and presentation. I like it. And also apologies for being a little late with this review due to, again, my personal circumstances and my full-time role, but again, I'm not going to bore you with that. Both run 4K and PS5 appears to use DRS, varying between an approximate high at a base level of 2240 by 1260 to an approximate low of 1920 by 1080 lowest base, upscaled to 4K via a temporal AA pass, with similar enough artifacts to FSR2 for me to be confident that that's what the team have used. Now the UI is 4K and the real-time cinematics also run closer to 4K as a base render resolution than gameplay, helped by being 30 FPS, which is true on PS5 Pro as well. Now these are real time, aside some infrequent 24 FPS video sections, but on PS5 Pro the gameplay also appears to hit 4K most often, and that is down to the fact that it uses PSSR2, which achieves a much better resolve of fine detail, reduced ghosting, and harder to spot counts below that target, but I did get an approximate 1440 to 1620p at the lowest level of my counts. Now the art, the subdued colour and lighting, along with relatively low frequency textures, means it can look significantly better in some areas and less so in others, such as here on the specular edges of the suit, the shoulder and the hair, along with the distant geometry, textures and particles. Far more ghosting on the floating elements on PS5's FSR AA, with many specular elements disappearing into that temporal blend. PSSR2 retains far more high frequency detail, drastically increasing the density of the debris and improving fine detail in the suit, thin edges, textures, resolving all those finer details with far less trailing of elements in motion, and more importantly, all of those particles can now be seen flickering in the light and the volumetrics. Now here though the difference is much smaller, minor reductions on fine specular particles again being the only real change. Cutscenes are close to identical as they top out at 4K and 30 FPS, so the PS5 is able to close the gap in raw pixels, showing that graphical effect wise both consoles look to be on parity. Now back in gameplay though, fine detail like hair, shadows, bloom and AO can look quite pixelated and noisy on PS5, with the PS5 Pro offering a sharper, more refined and detailed image, with hair being a huge increase due to more pixels and far better temporal stability, reduced ghosting and more coherency frame to frame. The result is a game that looks much better in action, with multicoloured bullet spray coming at you, enemies exploding to a firework of geometry to particle debris, which Housemarque's own custom FX system again elevates the game away from the standard UE5 system which most other games use when they use this engine. And again, it's one that they have impressed with since Resogun on the PS3 and PS4 back in 2013, Ex Machina, their voxel based destruction, and of course Returnal prior to this, which is ramped up even more here, albeit with less destruction. But the aim remains to create a more modern shoot 'em up from the 80s and 90s with drone-based attacks, pattern-based mathematical bullet spawns like Thunder Force series, R-Type, Battle Squadron, and even Space Harrier. And in the midst of bullet ballet action with lights, explosions, more sparks than a Guy Fawkes night, both consoles look and play almost identically, but the PS5 Pro is definitely more refined and cleaner and more stable in action. Now, this is not to say that PS5 Pro does not have some other improvements over base PS5. Reflections and shadows, for example, are better on Pro, SSR used with projected cube maps, and a mix of cascaded shadow maps and Unreal Engine 5's virtual shadow maps, but with some issues. Blocky, broken geometry can be left behind, appearing that the team have aimed to use VSMs mixed with cascaded shadow maps to balance the cost across the entire game, as sun and other light sources seem to use them, with the full open levels using CSMs on some objects and VSMs on others, and these are likely due to the game using nanite for many objects, such as these statues. As you can see, no LOD drawing as I rush towards or away from them, and the game has very dense geometry throughout. Virtual shadow maps rely on nanite to be used, and they can also draw in and out based on camera and depth from light sources, another giveaway that they're in use, but no cascade swap is seen. But we can still see cascaded shadow maps as I walk in and out of the screen here. Reflections are much clearer, cleaner and more stable on Pro, but both from a higher resolution base and PSSR2. Shadow resolution and filtering are much higher quality over PS5. PSSR2 likely also helps here. The game's virtual shadow map system sometimes creates a penumbra edge, looking to use ray trace shadow maps, but this is noisy at times due to the ray being sampled across the virtual shadow map and not real geometry, and it's noisy and has a clear band where these are used. Now, these blends in some sections are noisy with heavy dithering and low denoising, with a geometry grid shadow marking a virtual split as Arjon's shadow comes through the RTSM VSM. Now, PS5 Pro has similar issues, but the denoising is slightly better and reflections are more stable and is mixed with proxy capsules both for indirect shadows and reflections, but also sections that appear to use some form of ray traced or ray marched dynamic cube maps in certain locales, which create perfect parallax aligned geometry to the camera. Now, these are mixed with SSR, which improves light reactions, indirect illumination, such as on the diffuse pillars on Pro here, but also notice the tone mapping and light culling on the bounding box as you walk towards the doorway. The quality improvements are likely due to a mix of improved sample rates per pixel and PSSR2 improving the final results. Now, this mix of reflections aids diffuse and specular surfaces such as water bodies, which use a water fluid sim based on the same particle system that drives so much of the FX. The portal section here shows that fluid driver for the effect itself, and when mixed with a geometry layer to create a surface undulation, it completes a great water effect. Now, in larger battles mixed with surface reaction, screen space reflections, enemy swarms and those beautiful particle-based pyrotechnics, it is a tech-heavy game that at times reminds me of Doom: The Dark Ages in arenas and open-level mix. Even art design at times feels similar. Performance then, well, it's pretty much a lock 60 on both, although some heavy particle and alpha effects can cause minor single frame drops. This happens slightly more on Pro due to increased resolution of everything, improved quality and PSSR2 upscaling cost, but these are so minor as to be all but invisible. In around 14 to 15 minutes of mixed testing of running, dodging, leaping and shielding, I found only 34 drop frames on PS5 Pro and only 19 on base PS5. The game can also have some occasional streaming data stutters, only a few drop frames or 50 millisecond spikes are caused, and I suspect the procedural level design that effectively generates fixed areas that are joined and generated at runtime on each run, stitched together like a scale electric track to form the same start and end points with key fixed points in between. I suspect this process of loading in the next track block is a cause of these blips. Now, I did note a few tears in this sections that jump from 60 FPS gameplay to 30 FPS real-time cinematics, and then those 24 FPS videos, and then back to 30 and then 60. Now, in some of these, we also see that the 30 FPS real-time sections on base PS5 are actually 60 on the Pro. I spotted no other areas that had tearing, so likely data access CPU related, handling the playback, loading of new world, and enemies in parallel. So the game looks great and runs well, consistently, something equally true of Returnal on the base PS5 at launch, so there's no worries here. between review code coming before launch and just after, we've had 4 updates taking us to 1.003.004. The Pro appears slightly better now in those small frame drops and even closer to a flatline 60 FPS, but in gameplay the improvement is real but minor, and just makes the game achieve 99.8% of its 60 FPS target. And closing out the performance section is input latency and loading. Being capped at 60 FPS on both consoles means we cannot test if PS5 Pro has a better potential for lower input latency, but both consoles hand in an admirable low of 65.7 milliseconds and a high of 131, based on the shotgun being the slowest gun by design to shoot and therefore most powerful. This gives a good but not great median of 98 milliseconds, so certainly an area where 120Hz VRR mode may significantly aid the response times. Loading is seamless and no menu again, straight back into where you quit or the main hub. Warping to a new area is done within 3 seconds, making best use of the SSD and PS5's decompression block. Very cartridge-like indeed. Fundamentally, the tech features in the game are good. Animation is very good. Procedural physics are used in combat, but it's not as good on humans as it is on the enemies. Cinematics are visually the highest point in the game, and use of depth of field, bokeh often, skin, eyes and hair are very, very good indeed, as are lights and materials. The biggest gap from gameplay though are those models, specifically the lighting and shadow. I cannot help but feel the game had bigger aspirations than what we actually got here, with big cuts potentially in the content and design possible, and overall story aspects, such as the main hub and story threads, not really feeling fully explored.
What is that for you, Arjun?
Returnal vs Saros is an interesting one. The shared DNA is obvious, but so are the changes. Artistically, they also serve different design masters. Returnal had more of an ethereal H.R. Geiger meets John Carpenter's The Fog aesthetic, with dirty, dark jungle and Aztec-like ruins and alien artifacts, diffused surfaces and a foreboding atmosphere, as opposed to Saros more The Matrix come Aliens come Total Recall, with a brighter, more vibrant and stylized, almost gothic and Greek revival architectural cues. Saros pushes harder on a brighter tone, natural lighting, less fog volumes, more reflective surfaces, water, more light and shadow, and of course multicoloured hellfire from all angles, with a massive increase and upgrade in their particle-based FX system and amount on screen. Colliding, showering out of spawn emitters or blending from enemy geometry into a particle silhouette like vampires in Blade. The procedural random level flow works more consistently and logically in Saros also, and you can prefer one over the other, but Saros does a better job of mixing the art and tech with the gameplay and is a much faster paced game to boot. Sound design and DualShock use is also excellent, but not a huge increase on the already superb Returnal. But the Sony first-party games always use the DualSense well, which really adds a tactile and tangible USP to the PS5 and games on it. And whenever I play on PC or Xbox, the feedback and response of the controller becomes even more apparent. Gameplay wise, we're very focused on that bullet hell style created in the 90s with Batsugun. You travel through level, pick up new weapons, armor, choose the one that fits your needs, dual firing options, kill drones as you go, dodge, absorb, evade particle patterned enemy fire, fight mid-level tougher enemies, fight big end of level baddies, move to next stage. It is a modern shoot 'em up with those rogue elements reduced now, being able to carry over weapons, upgrades and the expandable kills even after dying. Makes it feel like a crossover of R-Type meets Thunder Force come Xenon 2. It works well as the game is very offensive with some defensive tactics required, rewarding risk with recharging your power shots, returning health or more. It's very frantic, busy at all times, and it controls well, presenting excellent controls and some impressive moments in battle. The challenge is hard but fair, and again it sounds superb with a set of 3D headphones or better yet a 7.1 system. The DualShock adds a great deal to the game's fun, involvement and impact with those responsive triggers and dual stage actions when you click the left trigger to the dual fire. It takes a little bit of practice to get it right, but then it becomes second nature, and I like that because it goes beyond just pressing the right button often it's actually a tactile integration into the gameplay itself. And it can feel great in your hand, making it a standout aspect of the game, and again, many times of the PS5 overall. So, what's my overall views on Saros then? Well, at heart, this is a combat-heavy rogue-style game, and it really does continue the same game and almost a remake of Returnal, learning from those lessons there, feedback from the audience. It can be too easy at times and too hard suddenly. The upgrades and choice mixes in the game, and certainly how you can apply those different levels of bonuses and hindrances to actually give you a tactical advantage in some areas where you may not be stronger, or where you just want to get through the game easier, such as making the enemies a little bit less tough in terms of bullet sponging. The game's use of dynamic lights, virtual shadow maps, nanite, excellent AO and dense detail create some atmospheric and foreboding worlds to explore and fight within. Mixing many architectural designs from Greek, Roman, Gothic, organic, and even alien-like mechanical sections presents a varied set of biomes to adventure within. I just wish each world had a bigger variety of enemy types that mirrored the surroundings more sympathetically. The particle system, dynamic and chaotic action, along with contrasting colour schemes, pattern-based projectiles, and firework-like combat is the game's signature DNA, and is one of the most dynamic and impressive systems in games, surpassing anything I have seen using Unreal's Niagara equivalent. The use of tech in the game is also very eloquently done to balance performance and quality, and overall, even on PS5, it's a very good looking game. In terms of the game's story and characters, generally very, very poor. The story is weak, it doesn't add anything to the game. As I've mentioned before, it kind of feels unfinished and unpolished, and it's very juxtaposed into the game, not really making any logical sense as you play through. For me, it would have been far easier to just stick to the storyline of we are here to kick alien ass and chew bubblegum, but then again, somebody somewhere decided to try and add some level of layer to the game, but it doesn't really work. The combat is amazing, and that is why you're here. It's like watching a Bruce Lee film and then complaining about the acting compared to the fighting. The acting and the story isn't going to be a strong selling point of this game, and it feels as if it's tacked on because it is a Sony first party title, rather than actually having any meaningful input to the game overall. And that's it for my late but hopefully in-depth review of Saros on the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 Pro. Hopefully, if you have seen this review and you are in the market for picking this game up, or you weren't sure, this review will help give you a better idea to have a more informed choice. And remember, I am self-funded and completely independent, so if you like what I do, you can help by subscribing, reading more on this and many other things on my website, and even helping me over on Patreon for a few dollars or pounds a month, which gives you early and exclusive access, even a chance to give me some Q&A on my database episodes. Anyway, I'm out, but I'll catch you very soon on the next one.